And a pleasant good evening to everyone. This is Keith Williams, your host for the Author Showcase, where we show some love to those who have published a book or published a blog, or they may have a video blog, or they may want to help someone get published. Those are the people that we feature here on the Author Showcase. And so for this segment, we have TJ Champitto with us on this evening. TJ, hello, welcome to the show.
Hey, Keith, hello, and I appreciate you having me. I'm looking forward to it.
First of all, let everyone know who you are and what you do.
Sure. So my name's TJ Champitto, as you had mentioned. I'm a published author. I'm currently on my book tour for my latest crime fiction novel called called The Shadow Maker. Apologize. My debut came out in 2020. That was called The Medina Device. It was a great debut novel. It won a PenCraft Award, a 2020 Maxy Award, and was a finalist for the Silver Falchion Award at the Nashville International Writers Conference. But again, more importantly, I'm on tour right now for my latest book, The Shadow Maker, which is the first book in my new series. I'm real excited about
it. And I might add that that TJ is an Amazon best-selling author.
Why, thank you. Yes, I sure am, Keith. About a month after my debut came out, it hit number 49 on Amazon's best-selling fiction novels, so I was excited about that.
Other accolades that I want to throw out is that he is received a 2020 PenCraft Award for Literary Excellence, the Maxy Award for Best Thriller, and was named a finalist for the Silver Falchion Award at the 2020 Nashville International Writers Conference.
That's right, and all those were just wonderful experiences, and honored to have received each and every one. Just to see that a debut novel would get those type of accolades was really exciting.
So what led you to start writing?
Well, it's funny, I always enjoyed the written word, even as a younger kid, and getting into novels and discovering new authors that I enjoyed. I started to write travel articles for travel publications back in my mid-30s, maybe about 10 years ago. And just really enjoyed the short form and enjoyed traveling and writing, but I always had on my bucket list to write a novel. So a few years ago, I sat down and decided to write my first manuscript, and it's been a wild ride since.
And are there any authors that kind of inspire you, or any writers that you look up to? And it can be past or present.
Yeah, I think along the way throughout your journey, you find different authors that inspire you in different ways. When I was younger, one of my favorite authors was James Michener, and he wrote a wonderful novel called The Drifters, which was still to this day one of my favorite novels. The way he would describe his settings was very inspirational to me. He was a world-class traveler and knew his locations really well, and he would accomplish in one sentence what a lot of authors would take to do in a paragraph. You know what I mean? So he was really good at this real descriptive settings and creating this wonderful magical kind of visualization for the reader. So that inspired me as a young man. One of my favorite authors when I decided to get into writing was actually Dan Brown. Like millions of other people, I read the Da Vinci Code and was really kind of taken aback at some of the concepts that he decided to tackle and the way that he integrated some of the history and things like that into his novel. And I was really inspired by that. So I remember finishing that book and decided right then it was time for me to sit down and take a stab at my first manuscript. So that was a lot of fun. And since then, and since I've become published, I catch on to some authors that I really enjoy, and sometimes between writing manuscripts, you may pick up a couple other books just to see how other authors are doing it and look for a little bit of inspiration. So Brad Thor is one of the authors that I really enjoy reading right now, as well as Olin Steinhauer. Really have gotten into some of his works, and the way he paces his novels was really inspiring to me. So you kind of take these classes along the way by reading some of your favorite authors and looking for that inspiration.
So we're going to be talking about two of your books today. The first one we'll be talking about, of course, is the multi-award winning novel, The Medina Device.
Excellent.
So tell us a little bit about that book.
Yeah, so the Medina Device was a lot of fun. I wanted to write a big, epic, long novel, and I remember my agent saying, try to keep this one a little short, and we're going to try to get this sold to a publisher. We were able to sign on with a smaller press called Black Rose Writing. They were wonderful to work with, but the premise of the book is you've got a fellow, the main character named Cameron Lyle. He's a former Navy SEAL, so he has a lot of skills and character traits that suit him well to be a thief, really. So he's gotten together with a couple of his buddies. They knock over some casinos and basically put themselves on the radar of the FBI. They've caught the attention of the Las Vegas field department there. So long story short, there is a bit of a historical fiction tie into this as well. The second thing that's kind of happening along the main plot line of Cam and his band of thieves is that a scientific discovery has been made in Brazil. An odd device, we'll say, has been located at an ancient archaeological dig site. So Cam and his team are hired by this mysterious band of brothers and the secret society to retrieve this artifact. So the novel really follows Cam and his team as they discover this thing. Obviously, things start to go wrong, and it really goes from there. I don't want to give too much away of what the device is, but it was a lot of fun to write. It's got a little bit of a sci-fi theme at the end, and breaks a little bit out of reality. So I actually had a lot of fun on that one, and as a first-time author at the time, I just didn't feel any boundaries. I just had a lot of fun writing that book, and took a lot of chances with the characters and some of the scenes and the plot line itself, especially the ending. So I just had an absolute blast writing that novel.
So I'm on your website right now, and I'm looking like towards the bottom of the front page, and I'm looking at the cover of the book,
Mhm.
Medina Device, and the cover itself, looks like you got some espionage, James Bond, type of thing going on with this,
Right.
cover, right there. Did you had a choice in the design cover, or that was the publisher?
Typically when you publish with a traditional publisher, they certainly look for that feedback, but I wouldn't say that I had a lot of say in that cover. We sit down with the team, and the editors obviously know the premise of the book, and they're very familiar with it. So and then from there, they just let the designer kind of go. And I think for the cover of the Medina Device, we had some fun with that. I think the idea was to kind of go with this Alfred Hitchcock kind of mystery action thriller look. So it's that silhouette on a real light cover, and it's got that kind of mysterious look to it. So but yes, the gentleman on the cover is our main character, Cam Lyle, and we've got some astrological graphics behind it to kind of showcase some of the elements of this mysterious device that they get their hands on.
Oh, so it's actually is it a physical? So it's actually the name of a device.
It is, and just to kind of get into it a little bit, the brotherhood or the secret society that is looking for this device are called the Knights of Medina, and this device is found, as I mentioned earlier, at this archaeological dig site in Brazil. And the funny thing is, it's at a dig site where they're pulling artifacts that are 2 and 3,000 years old. They come from the Incan Empire, and all of a sudden they find this device that almost has electronic elements to it, and it's a real head scratcher. So it's one of those type of movies, or I'm sorry, books that are inspired by movies like X-Files and some of these other things. So there is, as I mentioned, a little break from reality, and I had a lot of fun with it. So the reader, as the as the plot kind of thickens, so to speak, going through it, the big catch for the reader is, what is the device? What do these guys have their hands on? So that's kind of what keeps you turning the page.
I kind of really see this. I kind of really see in this book becoming a movie.
I hear that. I hear that a lot. It would make a
Because
great
I
movie.
mean, the title. I mean,
Mhm.
if this book was to turn, into a movie, the title itself would be an attention grab.
Yeah, I think a director and a producer would have a lot of fun. It's got a lot of great settings and a lot of great scenes that would probably suit themselves real well for the big screen. And that book launched right during the right as the coronavirus hit, and the world somewhat stood still there for a while. So all the authors who had books come out during that time of 2020, book tours were canceled. But I do remember a couple of studios out in LA showed a little bit of interest in the Medina device, and of course, as COVID-19 rattled on through that year, some of that interest sort of fizzled out. But the book still sells well. I think it still gets some attention, and who knows, maybe one of those days we'll get a call for a film deal on it. That'd be wonderful.
Yeah, I really see this as as a movie. Now, the part where there's actually a physical object,
Mhm.
it kind of reminds me of the Pink Panther movie series.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
not the cartoon, because in the cartoon, you actually have a pink cat,
Right.
but
Right.
in the movie, and I had to admit that I found out about that recently. Was like, why did they name this movie the Pink Panther? Because I was thinking about the cartoon,
Yeah.
where you had the pink, cat, but after like watching the first movie, I discovered what the
Right.
Pink Panther was. It was actually a pink diamond.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny how you have different types of stories being told, and sometimes it's a story that's really driven by the plot or a specific item or a thing, and we call it a MacGuffin. If there's this mysterious object or thing that is driving the story, that's your MacGuffin. So the device is, I guess, my MacGuffin for that book. And like I said, it was a lot of fun. The ending, I just really wanted to turn some heads and have this hard left turn at the end where no reader would have seen it coming. And I like to think I accomplished that after some of the reviews came out. One of the themes I kept hearing over and over was, I did not see that ending coming. So you get to have fun when you've got this MacGuffin or this object that you're chasing, and then you get to have this big reveal at the end. And of course, in the case of the Pink Panther, that reveal happens a little sooner, but but it is
Yeah,
this
the only
object that's
difference
sort of
is
the
that,
driving.
it's like a mystery, comedy, where, this book, as you mentioned, kind of have a little action in it,
Mhm.
sci-fi, uh, but you have a similarity, there. Now, what are some of the themes that are captured in this book?
Um, one of the things is I really enjoy writing about criminals and bad guys. There's plenty of books out there about CIA agents and running around in these spy thrillers, and those are a lot of fun. And maybe I'll try my hand at that one day. But when I set out to be an author, I always wanted to set that perspective sort of from a different side, where it is from the criminal side. And sometimes they're not all awful people. So in the case of the Medina device, one of the themes that I had fun with is these are good guys, and in their minds, they see it as they're stealing uh, from these large corporations. And what they do is, after they take their treasure home, they divide that up and then send most of that loot back to charities. They'll pick a charity. So there's that whole Robin Hood thing kind of happening at the beginning of the Medina Device. And I think it helps the reader sort of grab hold of those characters a little bit, not just see them as these criminals. They're not murderers. They're not killers. They're not, as they say, they're not trying to hurt anybody. In their minds, they think they're doing the right thing. And of course, on the flip side, there's this beleaguered FBI agent named Rand Kershaw, who's chasing them around throughout the book. And he's a good guy too, so it's funny when you look at which side of the law some of these characters are on, but they all share some of the same, human traits that make us all human. So that's probably one of the bigger themes. On the more plot driven side, I guess one of the themes that's played with a lot in this book is actually time travel. It's not something that's written on the back of the book or in the synopsis, but there's this idea of the possibility of time travel sort of being dangled in front of the reader throughout the book. And of course the characters all think that's absolutely ridiculous and unreal, which I think is a good way to make the characters a proxy for the reader, right? Because the reader thinks, boy, that doesn't seem realistic. Well, neither do the characters in the book. So again, they kind of go through this adventure and this quest, so to speak, and along the way, they're just trying to figure out what this device is, and more importantly, why everyone's trying to get their hands on it, why they're being shot at everywhere they go while they've got this thing. So that was another fun theme in it.
So, are you familiar with the character, the Green Hornet?
When I was a kid, I had some Green Hornet comics. I know there were a couple movies made back in the day, and one maybe in the last 10 years, but my familiarity with that character probably goes as far as me being a 15-year-old kid reading the comic book.
Because it kind of reminds me, because the Green Hornet, some people couldn't tell whether he was a good guy or whether he was a bad guy. It's kind of like, he was like straddling the fence. He was playing,
Right.
on both sides, of the fence. And, people really don't know, whose side, he's on.
He was a tough dude, and he picked his own battles. I think that's what caused a lot of the confusion among whether he was a good guy or a bad guy. But yeah, he was a tough dude, that's for sure.
And then you have a character like Tony Beretta, for example. He's a good guy with a badge, but you
Right.
can't really tell because when he investigates crime, he actually thinks like a criminal.
Yeah, and I've heard people say things like, the only difference between, the detective or the FBI agent chasing you down and the criminal is which side of the law you're on. A lot of times that the psychology of those characters can be pretty similar. And in fact, in the Medina Device, one of the big bad guys, so to speak, is actually on the side of the law, is working in U.S. intelligence. So you're reading this, and I think that line between good and bad actually gets pretty blurred in this book. And I think there's a lot of, such as Green Hornet, Tony Beretta, and some of these. I think that's a concept we see in entertainment and storytelling over time, where creators and writers and producers can have some fun with characters and as I said, sort of blur that line between good and bad. And I think it adds a lot of intrigue to that character. It's fun for viewers and readers to delve into those type of characters, I think.
Another example I can give is Detective Sergeant Rick Hunter from the Hunter series. Now he's an
Right.
LA cop who's happened to come from a mobster family.
Right. And that's a fun theme too.
And right off the bat, people assume and even his new partner assumed that did you strap on a badge so that you can get revenge on certain people. Like there was one episode where a monster father got hit.
Mhm.
He was murdered, and for Hunter, he kind of took that personally because he is drawn back to his own family, how his own family
Yeah.
was operating, and so he kind of feel some type of revenge on that. So I thought that was intriguing as well, because sometimes you can't tell whether he's a good guy or a bad guy, because here's a cop that doesn't necessarily play by the rules.
Yeah.
He play by his rules.
Yeah, and we see a character a lot like that in the Medina Device. And again, I think that's a fun theme to play with, and um, and it stretches back. And I think a lot of different creators have done different things with that. I mean, I think about Mario Puzo's The Godfather, right? The son Michael in the movie, that was played by a young Al Pacino. This was a kid that wanted nothing to do with the family, right? He joined the military, he fought in the war, he came back, he was going to live this real straight life, and somehow was able to, throughout the course of several events, was able to stick both feet back in and get pulled back into the world of organized crime. So it is a fun theme, and you see it kind of on both sides. And but yeah, it was a lot of fun writing the Medina Device, and really having these characters um, kind of step between both worlds, so to speak. So again, the reader may say, well, here's the criminal, but boy, he sure is doing some good things. And this guy that's after him is supposedly, holding the badge of righteousness and goodness, but he's doing a lot of really bad things. And the idea is, by the time you're halfway through the book, obviously you're rooting for our guy Cam Lyle and his team of thieves, as they're trying to get away from this evil side of the law enforcement. So I don't play with that theme in every novel, but again, with the Medina Device, I took a lot of chances. I had a lot of fun with the characters and the plot and different types of things that you could kind of meld into a story like that. And as I said, that was one of the funner themes I got to play with.
What about the Alexander Monday character on the show It Takes a Thief, played by
I,
Robert Wagner?
I haven't seen that one. Tell me about him.
Now, that character intrigued me because, here's a guy who is an actual thief, and he ended up getting, hired by the United States government,
Ah,
basically to steal.
yeah, I love it. I love it. I mean, sometimes the best thing, and we see that sometimes in film and movies, where you really need to know, from the law enforcement side, maybe you really need to know how a bank robbery is about to go down, or how a criminal thinks. And they may lean on that a little bit and bring them in. I can't pull the name of it, but I feel like there was a really fun show I watched years back that had that same kind of setup to it, and it was a lot of fun.
Right. You can't really, you know, shows like that is kind of hard to find, especially on, DVD. You probably have to watch like clips from YouTube or something.
Right, right.
Now,
That's right.
so winning multiple awards, for this book, I'm pretty sure that you have a wide audience, for this book. Whether you got sci-fi junkies or you got action junkies, like myself, I'm an action junkie. I love
Right.
action. I love action films or action books. So I can imagine that your audience is pretty wide.
It is, and it was funny. I do consider the Medina Device somewhat genre bending, so to speak. It's a crime thriller. It's also an action adventure. And again, there's this underlying theme of, sci-fi kind of in there that I think some of the more fantasy and sci-fi readers can grasp onto a little bit. So I did want to write something that really spanned a couple of different genres. And I'll always remember that book that way. You know, I have, you know, at this stage, as I get into this new series I'm writing, I'm very much kind of staying in one lane and with the crime thriller and the suspense action. But that was, you know, again, the Medina Device was just so much fun. I tried a lot of different things and really wanted to spread out a little bit between genres and give a few elements within the storyline that might catch a lot of different types of people's attention. So, you know, and the beauty of that is you get into books 2 and 3. Now you've got this really great reader base that's very curious about what your next book's going to be like. You know, so you go from being this unknown author to, you know, now I'm into book 2 and I'm doing book signings and I'm meeting people that have read my first book and are excited about the second one. So I think it's just you know, another step up the hill, so to speak, and I'm just having a ton of fun with it. But it was really special, the readership I think that I built during the Medina Device, and I think a lot of those readers will continue to follow me with some of my future work.
Okay, now we're going to switch gears and talk about the shadow, you know, maker. Again, you know, looking at the cover, it really, you know, stands out. It has like that, you know, that mystery feel. You know, I like the colors, you know, in this book. So let's
Yeah, they
get
did
into
such a great job with that cover.
yeah, they did an awesome job. So tell us a little bit about this book.
So I'm real excited about the Shadow Maker. There's no sci-fi side to it. Again, this is a crime thriller, a straight crime thriller. And you know, for a while I didn't think I wanted to write a series. You know, the way my brain works, I really had all these ideas of these one-off books I wanted to do. And my agent and editor really talked me into going for a series, you know, and that I could have some fun with it. And I got to tell you, Keith, I'm having an absolute blast. You know, I didn't think I would love writing a series as much as I am now. And of course, I'm working on books 2 and 3. So it's just very exciting. But The Shadow Maker is the first book in a series, obviously. The series is called The Shadow Maker, and it follows an interesting fellow by the name of Henry Sorolla. Henry is a world-class art and jewel thief. He's a rising star in the Croatian mob here in the United States. But Henry's got a secret. He's actually an FBI informant. He's been working with an FBI handler for the past few years. So the concept and the plot of the book is he basically stumbles into what's going to be the score of a lifetime, something that financially would set him up for the rest of his life. And you know, this is where it poses a problem. Now he's got two worlds, right? The world of being an informant, and the world of being this very talented thief, and he's trying to do his best from keeping those worlds colliding, so to speak, as he gets into this new heist. So, and what I like about this book, I'll just say real quick, you know, we were talking about themes and plots and talking about the Medina Device. You know, that book, my first book, was very plot driven. And one of the things I tried to have a lot of fun with here with The Shadow Maker and with my new book was making it more character driven. So I've really fallen in love with a lot of these characters in The Shadow Maker. They've got a lot of very interesting backgrounds and a lot of depth, and they were just a lot of fun to write.
What are some of the themes that are associated with this book?
So this book deals mostly, you know, honestly, not to sound cliche, it's a story of self-discovery. Henry has a bit of a shady past. He's an orphan of the Croatian War for Independence in the early 90s, and he lost his parents, and he was brought to America with his aunt and uncle and some folks from his village in Croatia as they fled the war. And some of the things that he thinks were part of his past that he's been told his whole life, he starts to question a little bit as this book goes on. He starts to question the loyalties of the people around him that have been with him his whole life. He starts to question whether or not he's in the right line of work. And I think to a certain extent, the fact that he has been recruited and has become an FBI informant, I think he's looking for a little sliver of goodness and humanity in himself. And Henry not doesn't want to look at himself as a bad guy. And I think one of the bigger themes is through this book is he really has to take a look in the mirror and look at what he is and what he's become. And that's kind of the neat part of his self-discovery and his journey through this novel.
And I'm quite sure that the audience, that you have for the first book will probably be the same audience for the Shadow Maker. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think if anyone who enjoyed the Medina Device is going to absolutely love the Shadow Maker. If nothing else, the action and the pacing will keep everybody happy. This book moves really smoothly. I'm really proud of the pacing and the sharpness of the storytelling. And I think those are some of the things that really made the Medina Device such a success. Was having that talent to keep your reader turning the page. And again, I think the pacing and the character development in the Shadow Maker is going to be enough to keep everybody happy. But yeah, the Medina Device, readership, as I mentioned before, was just so supportive and so loyal. And I know that they're back for the Shadow Maker, and everybody's been really enjoying it so far.
This book came out this year. You know how long this, book has been out?
Yeah, so the Shadow Maker just recently dropped on October 25th. We kicked off the book tour about the first week in November. And I've been just having a lot of fun over here on the East Coast and in the South, and was up in Kentucky the other day, and we're actually wrapping up the tour here at my local bookshop here in Greenville, South Carolina. So it's just been a lot of fun. It's been very exciting since it came out. I think we're going on 3 or 4 weeks now. So yeah, it's been going well.
Could you see another best-selling novel or a year? Because I think that is on pace for to follow the Medina.
It certainly feels like a key that really does. I mean, the bar was set pretty high with the Medina Device, but I have no doubt that as I grow as an author and my readership grows, I have no doubt that the Shadow Maker is going to enjoy some of those same successes and along the way. So yeah, I'm excited. I think the book's going to do well. But yeah, the Medina Device really just swung for the fences and went so beyond my expectations of how it was going to perform. So receiving some of those awards were just very humbling and I was very honored to receive those for that debut. So yeah, I would like to think the Shadow Maker is going to do just as well, if not better.
Where do you get the inspiration and creativity to write both of these books? Where does that come from?
It's funny. I mean, inspiration can come from so many different places. I read The Tourist by Owen Steinhauer recently, and I think the way he was setting up some scenes, right? So nothing specific, that I took that inspired me a scene or a concept or anything like that. But I think some of the way his setup for scenes and the way he would lead the reader sort of through the darkness and into a new scene, and make that very powerful. If it's a scary scene, you want them to be scared. If it's an intense scene, you want to build that suspense. And I do think as a writer, I've kind of turned that corner a bit here with this new book, and that was very inspiring when I read The Tourist. That I just wanted to. It inspired me in this way. I wanted to write something that moved fast, that kept people going. But in terms of other inspiration, like I said, it's funny where it can come from. I'll tell you, when I started conceptualizing the Shadow Maker, there was something I couldn't get out of my mind. Do you remember the movie The Usual Suspects?
Yes.
There was a scene, and everybody was enamored with that movie, right? And Kaiser Soze in the ending. And for some reason, when I was sitting around, trying to doodle this book out and get it outlined, I kept going back to this powerful moment at the end of that movie where something was happening the whole time, but you didn't know it. You didn't realize it as the viewer or as the reader. And it was right in front of you, but you just didn't see it. And I wanted to try to emulate that feeling that I got when I saw the end of Usual Suspects, and you realize the smaller, weaker character turned out to be, this amazing criminal mastermind. Now, that's not the concept I used for the Shadowmaker, but it was just this feeling that something was happening behind the curtain that you didn't see for the entire 2 hours you were watching the film. So I tried my best to really capture that moment at the end of this book, and not to give anything away, but I really did just want to make it to where there's things happening that maybe you're not seeing or maybe not grabbing onto as a reader. And I think that's one of the reasons we read books, and that we love the written word, or we love certain types of films and genres or mysteries, is to see, can you be tricked as a viewer? Can you be wooed away from the ending, as a reader, and really get shocked? And I remember a really talented editor told me once, your reader is 10 times smarter than you ever think they are. So, treat them as such, so to speak. So, yeah, I had a lot of fun. And there was, again, I just think that moment at the end of that movie, that the powerful message there, and that the feeling that the veil had been lifted. So that's what I was shooting for at the Shadowmaker. I think I accomplished it. I certainly hope so. But that was an inspirational moment there. And there were some other little things along the way. When you're working on a scene that you can't quite figure out, you could get that inspiration from anywhere. So I always try to absorb as much as I can, in those moments where I'm searching for inspiration. And maybe it's a historical documentary, maybe it's a fast action movie. Or maybe it's just a really good book, but there's things that sort of spark that inspiration.
You also wrote some blogs as well. One of the most important ones that you've written was what's the writing process. I
Yes.
think that stands out. Not that any of your other blogs, don't stand out, but I think for purposes of this conversation and the
Mhm.
subject matter, that means authors. It's pretty interesting that you have a blog here that talks about the writing process. I'm just gonna go over it real quick.
Yeah, yeah, please.
In order: revision, drafting, revision, editing, publicate. No, I'm sorry. Let me start over. It's pre-writing, drafting, revision, editing, and publication.
Hmm.
So if anyone want to know, well, what is the writing process? That's it.
Yeah, those are some pretty broad, within each one of those steps. Those are um, pretty basic steps to get through, but just to lay those out. And I think each author does each one of those steps perhaps a little bit differently. I always say I'm a planner, and I have learned so much about the process over the years. My very first manuscript, I think, took me 3 years to write. Um, and now I've kind of mastered this process, or not mastered. I've got a long way to go to master it, but I think I've sharpened my knives in terms of the process a bit, and I understand the importance of outlining a book, and that whole pre-writing section that you mentioned. I always say, before I sit down to write a book and start the first chapter, I want to know how it ends. I think there's a lot of authors out there who may just allow a stream of consciousness, and they've got a loose idea of the story, and they may just start writing, and that's all fine and well, but I think that's usually what slows you down, gets you slowed down on writer's block and things like this. It's real hard to get writer's block when you've got a really nice tight outline, at least the sections and the scenes and the acts throughout the story, and you have a good idea of how that's going to end. Obviously you leave a lot of stuff open, you fill in some blanks along the way, but I at least think having that story arc is a big part of it, and it helps write faster. I can write out a full-length novel in about 6 months now, and That's pretty fast, you know, and I'm really proud of that. And I'm sure my editor and publisher love that they're getting work that fast. But the process, I think, is you spend a lot of time feeling it out as early on as a writer. But at the end of the day, you've got to do what works best for you. And for me, I'm a list maker, you know, I'm very organized. So I like to have that outline finished and ready to go before I even start.
All righty, we are going to get ready to close out here. And before we do, tell us, how can we reach you if they wanted to purchase a book?
Yeah, absolutely. So The Shadow Maker was released by Wild Blue Press, which is a pretty large publisher, and we've got large distribution. So you can find my book on Barnes and Noble. You can find it on Amazon, Books A Million online. But you know, honestly, at the end of the day, I urge people to go to their local bookstore. I'm a big supporter of independent bookstores. They may not have it on the shelf. I'm not a New York Times bestseller, but it will certainly be in their catalog. They can access it through their distributor, and probably put it in order from you. The quickest way to get it would just be to go to Amazon and download the Kindle, or order a hardcover through there. But again, I always like to support those independent bookstores. You can certainly learn more about me as an author at tjcauthor.com. I've got links there on where to purchase the book, and some more information on the Shadow Maker, as well as the Medina Device, and things like that.
And you guys, you really need to check out the covers. I mean, the covers are spot on.
Hey, I appreciate that. And you're not wrong. Before we close out, I do just want to say what a great job the whole team at Wild Blue Press was. When they showed me the first mock-ups of this cover, I was just floored, and I was really excited. You know, especially, we were talking about the Medina Device cover earlier. There's this very classic simplicity to it that was really neat and fit that book. But this one really stands out. I think it stands out on the bookshelf, and they just did an amazing job. And as an author, honestly, it's one of the coolest things is when you see the cover for the first time. It's like unwrapping a Christmas present.
Right, the shadow, the cover for the shadow box. Are you sure that if I turn on the lights, that it may glow in the dark?
It might glow in the dark and come at you right off the screen, actually, if you turn out the dark. So you might want to keep a night light on or something when you read this book.
Okay.
But thank you, Keith. I appreciate it. It is a really cool cover. I'm glad you like it.
Now, as we do with all of our guests, no matter what podcast, that they're on. Of course, we have like 4 different podcasts,
Yeah, yeah.
and so no matter what podcast they're on, uh, we always have the guests deliver the last word.
Oh, wonderful. Well, let me just say this. I want to first thank you for letting me on. I appreciate all of your listeners and everybody for hanging out and sitting throughout our conversation today. This was a lot of fun. And my last word would be, if you're a reader looking for something new, go check out The Shadow Maker. If you're a new author or an aspiring writer, never give up, run the gauntlet, and just keep pressing onward. This is a wonderful experience that I've had. It's been a wonderful kind of road along the way, being an author and being a writer. And I know that there's a lot of passionate, talented folks out there. So just keep going, keep writing, keep publishing, and enjoy yourself.
All righty. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to have a little chit chat with us here at the Author Showcase. Really appreciate it.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. Thank you so much, Keith. This is a lot of fun. Thank you.
And that would do it for us here with the Author Showcase. I'm Keith Williams, your host. Be sure to join us next week for another great artist. And if you are a book publisher, a book author, you got a book coming out, or you already have a book coming out, we do encourage you to send an email. That's OBSG as in George, I as in Irving, A as in Apple at gmail.com. We love to have you on. Now we are booked for November and December, so we are getting ready to take and process requests for the year 2023. We had a great year in 2020. That decided to guest on the show. Thank you so much. 2022 has been a great year for us, and we're looking forward to 2023. So until then, I bid you adieu. Have a great evening.